It's unbelievable. Another group of people who literally saw a spaceship out there, and one of the persons actually were abducted out of Giant Rock. This is in 2002. She had it, and she still. I was going to do an interview. I was going to do video her thing. I talked to her at length for hours and hours and hours, but I could never get her on the camera. As far as that, because it was, and she had some real bad problems as far as with that whole thing. But the whole group, and they were all actually people who were working in the industry, in the movie industry, because they used to go out there and hang out during the weekends. They all lived in Venice and West Hollywood, and they were working in the film industry at various capacity. So they all had this sighting out there, and then this abduction, and they all went back after they had this experience, and they quit. And they all got together and they walked across the United States. They had the impact was so much on them. This is kind of a real interesting thing. They walked across the United States. They're still there. They actually left the movie industry and they literally walked across the United States. Some fascinating stuff that goes along with it. So these are all stories and things that I've been able to garnish that never got in the. I didn't know. This is over the last 3 years that people have contacted me and shared their experiences and things like that, specifically out of Giant Rock or out in the vicinity of High Desert. So it's kind of fascinating. And it's always nice to hear too. But again, I think I caution everyone out there too. I mean, most people, if you even remotely think that you might have been abducted, then you were. That's the other thing too.
Well,
you were.
A lot of people don't realize that. I had a wildlife game warden on my show. He wrote a book called Owls back maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And, during the, talking with him, we started touching base that, in which it wasn't in his book, but he was in his bedroom with his, he kind of lived out, not in the city area. So he didn't bother closing the curtains. And then all of a sudden he saw these grays walking towards his window. And then all of a sudden he fell asleep. And then all of a sudden, and he didn't associate this, he would go out doing his job, or he would be with people, and the owls would appear, a lot of owls, more than normal. And I explained to him, I said, have you ever thought that you were abducted and they, read your mind and you had owls on your mind, for example? So, every time you see a alien or a gray or whatever it is, you don't see him as an alien, you see him as an owl.
Now, yeah.
Yeah, and that how many people maybe have been abducted and don't realize it? Like Timothy Cullen, when he, had his implant removed, about a month or two later, him and his wife were going to town, and, right where he first saw the first UFO, he saw another UFO over the mountaintop or the huge hill, kind of just hovering there. And, they just kind of looked at it and kept on going. And I said, well, gee, after you had your one implant removed by Dr. Roger Lear, did you ever go back and see if you were abducted again and, and see if you were implanted again? Because I found it kind of strange, that a UFO would appear in the same area, and maybe he was, abducted again and not realizing it.
Yeah, and really that could very well be. There's a high likelihood. There seems to be a of interest, and two, I think that as far as the friendlies go, there's two. There's and I don't know as far as Again, you always ask these questions. Why me? Okay, first of all, why me? Why am I so special? Et cetera, et cetera. And all that stuff, because those are real interesting questions, as far as why am I being picked on, etc. It illuminates a whole gigantic part of your whole psyche, as far as that, and as far as the intelligence that you end up with. There's I think that there are certain benefits. I mean, if you can handle the emotional side of it, there's certain benefits because you have this tremendous thirst to find out more and more, as far as that. So there is meaning behind it. I mean, there really is. And as far as that, and I look at the difference between me and my own, my own brothers and sisters, as far as that, because although they had some minimal experiences, being abducted and seeing, various things, they did, but not to the extent that I had, or have had. My mother is an interesting case too, and my mother and my sister and me were walking out in the desert, which we live right next to George, and the Integratron. I mean, we're out there as far as that. And my mother could never say, would always say, pewee to this whole UFO stuff, and it's all a bunch of nonsense, and it's all of my Uncle George's fantastic, mind, and et cetera, et cetera. And so we definitely had that conversation within the family until my sister and me and her were walking out in the desert, and we got buzzed by a low flying UFO in the night out in the desert. And after that, my mother didn't have another negative thing to say about the whole UFO.
Now, can you describe any of the UFOs you've ever seen? What did they look like? Were they round, cigar shape, blimp shape, or various different?
Well, actually, I've had a variety of them. One of the things I saw, and I got it in the book, is almost a square spinning cotton candy shape, whatever it is. It's just the outline of it is so bright, and the color, just the color of cotton candy, and various, like the pinks and the greens and et cetera, almost tumbling, out there. I said those. Then I actually had a sighting of one that was about the size of 3 football fields, that was completely like an oval, just kind of cruising down the valley in Utah, and then that came by, and that was on the outline round the rainbow colors of that, rainbow colors. And then I've seen disc, the silver disc. Then the one that I saw with my mother was there were lights, and it was a kind of a round, just almost a completely round ship, maybe 100 feet. It came and it just buzzed us, et cetera, et cetera. So I've seen all kinds of different shapes of them. I've never saw the cigar shape ones. As far as that, I never saw them, and I saw the V shape, the ones, as far as that. So I've seen a variety of them. I mean, as far as, so when you ask what they look like, I mean, it's just a wide thing. And again, I don't know whether I always seem to be in a serendipitous or the right place at the right time, or I'm looking up and seeing them, or I have this almost antenna, and they call it the contactee antenna, that literally makes you walk out and view things, makes you actually wake up and see things. And so I've had that antenna. So I think probably over my lifespan, and even up until about a year ago, I think that was the last one I had. That was was probably a year ago. I've probably had about 33 different sightings.
Oh wow!
Now
yeah. I had one that I don't know if it was a UFO or what, but this is like in the mid 70s. I for a while went to North Carolina for a job, and on the way back from North Carolina, we were in New Mexico, and at that time they didn't have the speed limit was really high, or I don't even remember what it was, but I know you could go really fast. And I was doing that because, I had a GTO, and hey, I where I was from, it was 70 miles an hour, and I think it was like 105 or something weird speed limit you could go. And I was doing it. And all of a sudden, my wife, or ex-wife now, was sitting next to me, and the whole car lit up inside, and all around the car lit up bright, or brighter than daylight. That's where it hurt your eyes. And, I figured, oh, gee, I am getting pulled over by, a copter or something, and I pulled over and I get out of the car and I'm looking up and all I could see is this huge bright light. It was just intense, but I didn't hear any sound. I was out in the desert. It was totally quiet. And I was in the military. I know what helicopters sound like. I certainly know I've been on them. And there was no sound of the egg beating noise, no nothing. It was just no sound. And within probably 10, 15 seconds, it just went, and it was gone. And no, maybe they were scanning us and saw my ex-wife, and they said, no way, we don't want her DNA. And they took off, but yeah, right. But then I was talking.
We're going to move on. Danger.
Yeah, well, thank God, maybe, because I certainly wouldn't be, or we were abducted. I don't know, but I'll go into a little farther. Peter Davenport, who runs the UFO Reporting Center, he had kind of like the same type of sighting himself years ago. That's what got him into it. But I'm going to tell you, this is something funny. Years ago, I went to the doctor because I was having kind of like back pains and other issues. And they did, x-rays and all this stuff. And I'm sitting in the waiting room and the head nurse comes up, to tell me that the doctor is going to be a few minutes late and asked me, where did you get that metal in your lower back? And I go, what metal? And she says, well, in the x-rays and all that stuff, I said, well, hey, I broke my tailbone, but no, she said, that's up, that's down lower. Up, where did you get it? And I go, I never had anything. And, the doctor himself, started talking about, well, you must have had surgery, but I don't see any scars on your back in that area. I mean, I certainly got a scar where they put my tailbone back together. But in this area, there's no scars. There was no scarring, no nothing. Anyway, and I said, well, can we remove it? And he goes, no, because, it's scar tissue, formed around it. And if I go in and do surgery, you could be paralyzed, So I kind of like lived with it. And then back a few years ago, one of my sons got in trouble where I had to go to court with him every month for a year. And I would go to the Pierce County Courthouse, and it didn't matter if I went through the front or back. The alarm would go off, and I mean, I have no belt on, I'd have no money on me or nothing, and I can't go through a metal detector without setting the alarm off. And sometimes I wonder if maybe that encounter I had, it seemed like 15 or 20 seconds, maybe I was abducted or something, and you don't know. It's weird that I can't go through any metal detector without setting an alarm off. And I never had anything that I'm aware of ever happen to me, where there'd be a piece of metal as big as what the doctor said in my back.
Yeah, no, I mean, my guess is that, I mean, usually that's it. You get these, it's almost this, I guess it's oblique. These oblique happenings. It's like a sideways thing as far as that. Well, I'm driving down the highway, and all of a sudden everything's completely lit up inside my car, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then but then it all went away.
Yeah, it went away. It went poof. It was gone.
Right. Yeah, it all went away. Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. So if you think about the laws of physics, which incidentally, I mean, again, this is why I almost, a lot, there are a lot of very, very educated people, and they have a lot of great theories, but it's very scientific, and they're skeptics, et cetera, as far as that. But I get a little frustrated because when you get down into the Planck scale, or you get down to the subatomic world, all of our known physics doesn't work that way. Okay, so so it doesn't. You throw everything once you get down to that whole area, everything what you think law of thermodynamics, et cetera, you throw it out the window because it doesn't work there. Okay, so you got these damn things flying around which you know that if first of all, they're not burning anything to move around, so you know that they're violating every law you can think about. So when you talk about space and time,